Let's do this again, shall we? Doom 1 and 2 were first-person shooters released for PCs in the early 90s, almost immediately catching the eye of the general public with its brutalist take on first-person shooting, which is also a genre popularized by Doom's landmark success. Such noteworthy series such as Duke Nukem, Shadow Warrior, and even an IP that had already dominated pop culture decades before could not escape being labeled a Doom clone. A popular, if a bit insulting title for the pioneers in what is perhaps the most well-known style of games on the market today. And id Software did not wait to capitalize on their hellish duology either. Expansion packs for both main entries hit the shelves soon after, introducing new levels and overall increasing the time players spent in hell. Though, that only covered those who owned a PC, and in Doom 2's case, a rather beefy one at that. Even though the console market wasn't quite the Goliath it is today, it still accounted for a decent chunk of the industry in the 90s, and since Doom was the hottest thing on the block, obviously they wanted a slice of the action as well. Its response? A lobotomy. Consoles around the time were far from ready for Doom, both demographically, as systems like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo were seen as fancy toys for kids around the time, and literally. Come on, if Doom 2 brought PCs to its knees, I don't even want to think about what it'd do to Mario.
Mamma mia, here we go again!
But that didn't stop the publishers from trying, with ports to practically every old school video game console out at the time, even the ones that failed completely. Looking at you, 3DO. God, why does it run this bad? But the ones most commonly cited are the versions on the Sega 32X, Super Nintendo, the Game Boy Advance, and the PlayStation 1. Now, I've poked fun at these ports of the games in the past, but I can't deny how impressive they really are, with a few withstanding, but that goes without saying. All of them provide the same demon-blasting experience found in the original, with enough oddities to make them feel unique when compared. Especially the one made for the PlayStation 1, where they decided to change the soundtrack into something more intense and visceral, utterly uprooting the kick-ass nature for something far more frightening. Full credit goes to the game's composer, Aubrey Hodges, for this shift. And just a mere 2 years later, he'd go on to provide the soundtrack for yet another Doom project. One not made by the original developers, and instead made by a team hailing from the same studio which were responsible for a certain title which also pushed the bar when it came to graphic violence in gaming. That's right, Rampage! For a system known for kiddie 3D platformers. Let's talk about Doom 64. Doom 64 is an odd game. In modern day, it's one that's almost equally as known as it is obscure. Allow me to elaborate, because I know for a fact that I just spat some serious word vomit at you. It's a video game known by the wider Doom community solely because it's known as one of the more obscure additions to the franchise, with the majority of people not actually having played this particular game for themselves. This happenstance is thanks to a few factors. For starters, the majority of Doom players were on PC, and unless they owned one before, I doubt that many of them went out of their way to buy a Nintendo 64, not sure if playing the next mainline Doom game is worth $200. And that's assuming that they even knew that Doom 64 was a totally original game, and not just a port of the original for the 64's audience. And the confusion is well justified. The N64 was absolutely flooded with basic ports of the games from other systems. Mega Man 64, and most appealing for the audience for this video, Duke Nukem 64. Jesus Christ, how often am I going to say N64? Were both ports of games which were already available on the market beforehand. Most egregious in Mega Man's case, since they added very little in the way of new content to that version, while the ass-chewing Macho Man received redone weapon sprites and expanded levels.
Fucking dick, kick him!
And when looking at screenshots for Doom 64, it's not difficult to come to that conclusion on your own. Hell, it's literally exactly what happened to me. But no, Doom 64 is a completely original product with no ties to the others. Aside from enemies, weapons, engine, and similar environments. Hey, it's still its own game, damn it! But since they decided to slap the 64 to the title and remove any unique subtitle, some of us got confused. Which is even funnier when you realize that early on in development, the game originally had a subtitle. It was called Doom Absolution. Look, it's better than Doom 64, okay? Tangent over. Let's get into the game's development history. As I mentioned earlier, Doom 64 was not developed by the boys over at id Software. They had their hands full of creating the second largest retro shooter franchise, Quake. This time around, we have Midway Games to thank for this murderous adventure through the gates of hell. The very same people who helped give us Mortal Kombat Gorf. It's Gorf. Best game of the century, and I will hear no objections whatsoever. More specifically, the game was developed by Midway's San Diego division, with id Software providing feedback and oversight on the project's development. Doom Absolution, as it was called at the time, began full production in late 1994, which was very surprising to learn. That was the same year that Doom 2 launched, which was only 1 year after the first game came out. Man, there really was a lot of Doom goodness in the 90s, huh? Too bad I was literally not in existence yet. The team at Midway were ambitious as well. Aside from crafting a wholly original plot and new level designs, they also completely recreated all the weapons and demon sprites for this outing. We'll get into specifics in a bit. For now, I'll say that the art design for Doom 64 is insanely bleak and imposing. The demons look dirty, grungy, and with one specific demon, looks like something straight out of the Necronomicon, which is coincidentally where these stupid little While the developers' ambitions were high, the hardware they were working with was, well, not ready for this much detail. The first big hurdle the developers had to overcome was the Nintendo 64's memory, or lack thereof. The system's stringent constraints when it came to using cartridges prevented a large number of concepts from being included in the final build of the game, a common issue that game developers ran into when it came to the N64. Hell, it's the primary reason that Square Enix took the Final Fantasy series away from Nintendo, and instead made mainline entries for the PlayStation. So inevitably, some things ended up on the cutting room floor. A handful of levels here and there, and most distressingly, demons like the ARTSTYLE, Papyrus from Undertale, and the Chain Gunner Zombie Soldier were cut. My thoughts on this? Thank God! But development pressed on. Originally slated for the Nintendo 64's launch, Doom 64 was delayed at the behest of id Software, who were dissatisfied with a decent chunk of the level designs in what was supposed to be the final build of the game. Which, by the way, id Software, you guys are most certainly not saints when it comes to bad level design. Regardless, the final version of the game was pushed back so further polish could be applied. Okay, now I'm starting to see this as foreshadowing for id Software's acquisition by Bethesda. Finally, we got our grubby little mitts on the game in mid-1997. And we're not going to talk about this original release. That's right, I wasted your time. What are you going to do, dislike the video? Oh, wait! As you can probably tell, it's decently hard to find a copy of the N64 game these days. Luckily, the game received an enhanced re-release for modern systems in 2020. Ported over to modern systems by a studio called Night Dive, Doom 64 is now running on an engine known as the Kex engine, as opposed to the original Doom engine. From what I've been able to gather from comparing footage between the two releases, they play nearly identically, but the original game is way darker. Seriously, I had trouble seeing at points in Doom 2. I don't know what you want from me here. So while the port is mostly faithful, I wanted to let you all know that there is a possibility for discrepancies between releases. But this is the version of the game that most of you are likely to play in the first place, so yeah. Kex engine! Slight correction to my summary of Doom 2. The Doom guy, as a matter of fact, did not actually get trapped in hell after defeating the Icon of Sin. It says so right in the ending text scroll after killing the boss. They don't really explain how he escaped hell after closing the portal to it. My best guess is that there was a window of time where the portal remained open despite the Icon of Sin being dead, or they were just two completely separate events and the Doom Man closed the portal after returning to the ruined Earth. In my original video, I interpreted the text as implying a sort of endless trek through the pits of hell in a vain attempt to return home when it wasn't feasible. Then again, we are playing classic Doom where the story is little more than interesting set dressing, so I suppose I should have taken the text literally. Regardless, Doom 64 opens up after the events of Doom 2. The Lone Marine, the hero who helped save Earth from total annihilation, solely because they murdered his pet rabbit, is still suffering years after rampaging through the depths of hell, suffering vivid nightmares where the demons continue to swarm him. And the stupid doctors aren't able to help quell the man's pain. But for now, all is well. The reconstruction of the devastated Earth was proceeding in the background, and in general, human civilization was healing after the invasion. That is until a lone, damaged satellite sends out one last bone-chilling message before frying itself. A terrifying demon known as the Mother Demon. I wonder if she gives birth. Survived the Doom Guy's murder spree in hell, and is resurrecting the mountain of corpses he left in his wake, using the reanimated bodies to once again terrorize humanity. Knowing the possible danger that the Mother Demon poses, the military digs through the archives and finds the reports about the so-called Doom event.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
And as the only soldier to survive the event, the Doom Guy is reinstated and once more set loose against the armies of hell. And just like every other game in the series, the plot from this point on is running from place to place, popping a cap in a Hell Knight's pale ass, until eventually you find yourself standing before the Mother Demon. And soon enough, she's dead, and you're given one of the most Doom things I've ever seen. The Doom Guy stands undefeated. Blood is pouring from his eyes, but he refuses to surrender, willingly choosing to stay in hell for the rest of days to ensure that no demon ever rises again. This is unabashed rule of cool nonsense, and it's fucking awesome. The music, the blood-stained background image, and the short but effective text sprawling across the screen, it all comes together and puts a nice cap on the classic Doom series.
Run.
My favorite ending in the series by far, right above Doom 1, solely because I was not ready for the sheer shock value in that ending. As a whole, the plot is nothing special, but is an interesting enough through line to keep me murdering demons without it feeling like mindless carnage. A true Doom staple when it comes to Doom storytelling, apparently. And honestly, I think that's fine. This way you can have all the interesting lore for those who care, and none of it for those who don't. Because, yet again, you don't get any of the background details unless you read the manual. So while I can't call it good, it does its job, and I cannot fault it for that. Also, the Doom Guy stays in hell purely to troll the demons. If that's not funny to you, I don't know what is. A video game soundtrack is one of the most vital resources developers have at their disposal. It's the connecting thread between all the other elements of the game, and only when all of these factors come into play can you have something truly amazing. Don't believe me? Visualize any scene from a video game you love. Have the image in your head? Good. Now I want you to go back to that game and turn off the music. Something is wrong. Everything else about the game is exactly as you remembered it, but without the background melody, it feels incomplete. Depending on who you are as a person, you may find the lack of a soundtrack calming, listening to nothing but the game's ambience. But for others, and especially me, who just finished the power fantasy that Doom and its score composed by Bobby Prince takes you on, walking through the gore-coated corridors in these maps feel uncomfortable. And that's exactly what Doom 64 aims to invoke. That feeling of absolute dread and discomfort in a game series known for empowering the player to an absurd degree. The only thing they fear is you? Well, when Aubrey Hodges is in charge of the score, you might as well be the only thing that doesn't scare them. The soundtrack for Doom 64 is incredible, just not in a traditional sense. Many of the tracks don't have any discernible melodies to them, no rhyme or reason, just the empty ambience of a dead building to keep you company. But as you continue to play through the game, encountering horrific monsters beyond your comprehension, things start to become clear in the music. Sounds familiar enough for you to recognize them, yet they are twisted, distorted. Close, but not quite what you're used to. Is that a fucking baby? Now that the spooky time is over, yes, Doom 64's soundtrack is a subversive masterpiece that took me completely by surprise once I started to play the game. I had heard whispers about the game and its music since the same composer also worked on the soundtrack for the PlayStation 1 port of Doom, and god is it great. Sure, it might not make for the best breakdance track, but when in the moment, it is unbelievably effective. And there is more than the ambient tracks. Take a listen to the endgame music for a more typical Doom sound. But yeah, overall, the whole thing is just amazing. I have quite a bit to say about Doom 64. It's an absolutely fascinating game that I feel has fallen under everybody's radar unjustly. Yet, it's actually been a struggle for me to talk about the gameplay in great detail, for everything it does differently from the original games. It's almost impressively unoriginal when it comes to the gameplay. Now, I know that doesn't sound bad initially, and it's not a red flag by any means. The game should play like the titles before it, but they should also push the series further, if even slightly. And Doom 64 does this in other areas, but not the gunplay. Allow me to elaborate. This is the third major entry in the Doom series, using the same engine as they were in 1993, meaning that the core formula for this game shares the exact same template as those other two. You run around maze-like levels, killing demons, collecting keycards, and solving switch puzzles until you reach the level's exit, sometimes fighting a boss at the end if you're lucky. And though I tried to deny this obvious facet, I can't anymore. I'm a bit worn out at this point. Marathoning the classic Doom games back-to-back has made the gameplay a bit stale. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. Doom 64 and the classic titles as a whole are still incredibly fun boomer shooters with tons of content. Wait, can I call these boomer shooters when these were just... boomer shooters recreate... whatever. Although, there are some noticeable flaws in the gameplay structure that stood out to me more than they did in the past. Some of which can be solely blamed on Doom 64's iteration on these established mechanics. But let's start with the positives first, because those are always more fun to talk about. The weapons, once again, are beyond satisfying to use against the demonic scourge. The demons, with their excellent new designs, are fun and, in some ways, more challenging than their previous incarnations. I found myself dying to the Arachnotrons far more ever than I did before. Though I'm unsure if that's just me, the stats will probably tell a different story. Minuscule programming differences aside, these are still the same mooks we've been putting even further into the ground for the last couple of years. Their attack patterns are the same. They take similar amounts of damage, and yeah, they're still good, but they don't offer up anything new. The wonderfully high polygon models help alleviate the issue to a degree, with one notable exception. See, I played the first Doom game, loved all the demons, with one exception. These stupid skulls! Otherwise called Lost Souls. Fire is hot, and heat causes burns, and burns are only fun when tied to a bedpost, so fuck these guys. I then played Doom 2, loved or tolerated the new demons, with, take a guess, one exception. This chunky son of a bitch right here, the Pain Elemental. His one and only attack is to spawn and fling my least favorite enemy from the last game at you. Eat shit, you little bitch! Fast forward to Doom 64 and we get this. In all seriousness, the new model is pretty fucking awesome and helps the Pain Elemental stand out when placed next to the Kako Demon. Not sure why the Doom 64 version has such long nails. But in the old games at least, they looked very similar, so I'm happy with the new look. What I'm far less pleased with is the fact that the new mouths allow the thing to shoot lost souls faster! Not to mention that these fucking things are way more deadly than they were ever in the other PC games. And that just makes me... I'm going to very gently set my controller down on my desk. But yeah, it's a bit saddening not to see much in the ways of new foes. Not at all helped by the lack of iconic demons introduced in Doom 2. I was originally going to include the Chain Gunner on that list, but Doom 64's later levels love to place hit-scanning enemies just high enough away from you so that they can kill you, but you can't kill them. So yeah, not really missing them here. I suffered the most deaths to zombie soldiers here purely because of their hit-scan attacks and significantly more cramped level design. Yes, in part due to the often cited storage constraints, Doom 64 was forced to forego the expansive and oftentimes overly large play areas as seen in Doom 2, opting instead for a healthy middle ground between tight corridors and a comparatively vast section to circle strafe through. Think of it as a compromise between the first and second game's level philosophy, although that very same philosophy brings with it some, negative design elements into this game. Maze design is back, baby, and I hate it with every goddamn cell in my body. Hyperbolic tone aside, I understand that this is merely an example of personal preference, so I'll try not to harp on it too much, and since Doom 64 maps are smaller, I found them a bit easier to navigate through, but you'll still be occasionally grinding up against random pillars, hoping to God you can activate a random hidden switch. Not great, but I suppose it could be far worse. The puzzles, though... Doom 64 is an absolutely gorgeous game. The graphics may not have the same charm found in the PC games, but as far as art design goes, I firmly believe that this is the best looking in the classic Doom series. The walls, structures, and everything is coated in a layer of dirt and grime. The difference between rust and dried blood ceases to matter as you claw your way through the abandoned Phobos base. Darkness consumes the base, with vicious monsters hiding in the dark, waiting for their moment to strike. And that's just the moon. As the game goes on, you'll be greeted with the hellish fires of, well, hell, where massive Gothic architecture dots the landscape, pillars of sin amongst an endless sea of blood and agonizing screams. You'll walk through horrific prisons, where, I guess other demons committed crimes? Not exactly sure what that's all about, but still, bodies are strung up, still wriggling around as the life ebbs away from them. And it's when their suffering is at its peak. These humans are immortalized inside the walls of these facilities, serving as little more than set dressing for whatever unfortunate soul wanders through these halls next. Unless you're me, who didn't notice these poor guys until I reached level 17. I'm capable of murdering every single... and completely lost my sanity. Killing myself over a rocket launcher. See, that's why I don't usually use that gun. Seriously though, the world in which you run around had a massive upgrade this time around. It's such a stunning improvement, so much so that I feel the team at Midway Games capture the setting id Software had in mind when making the original games better than they could. Which, by the way, they still look good. I was a fan of the environmental design there as well. But Lord have mercy, Doom 64 looks better. Which is even more impressive once you take a step back and realize that these textures were all crammed into one of these things. As we discussed earlier in this video, Midway ran into several development challenges with this title thanks to the small memory size of an N64 cartridge. At maximum, one of these gray things could only hold 64 megabytes of data. I see why that's funny, but it's like hitting me with a knock-knock joke after telling me my family died in a car wreck.
Why did the chicken cross the road?
This memory limitation forced the developers to cut back on some of the finer details in the game. For example, take a look at the Super Shotgun's reloading animation. Could you spot the issue? Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to firearms, but I'm pretty sure you don't just throw the barrel back to put new shells in the thing. Yes, sadly many of the weapon animations had to be simplified to an almost obnoxious degree, Now in normal play, you aren't likely to notice them at first, but over time, they'll spawn inside your mind. But by that same token, you'll quickly get used to them. On that note, the weapons! They're all the same guns you know and love from Doom 1 and 2, but now they look crispy. Redrawn for this game, and this game alone, the weapons now look more realistic than ever before, adding to the horrific and tense atmosphere the game aims to create. There isn't much more I can say about them, since in the grand scheme of things, they perform as expected. No one uses the fist, the chain gun and plasma gun are great at crowd control, I still find the BFG rather underwhelming, and for the most part, you'll still be exclusively using the super shotgun, though I will give credit where credit is due. Doom 64 has the best chainsaw design I've ever seen in a video game. With its twin blade design and UAC logo stamped right into the middle of this bad boy, it's the perfect blend of video game absurdity and bleak real world capitalism. Oh, I also really like the way the chain gun looks. Blue fire has just always been cool to me. And as if contributing to a long-running tradition in the franchise, Doom 64 only introduces one weapon to the game, the Unmaker. But if you want to go by what the game calls it, it's the what the f***, which the team got the concept for from the Doom Bible. And despite it having an impeccable design that makes it seem like the greatest thing since this particular frame in Family Guy, the Unmaker really isn't that good, firing off a single laser each time you pull the trigger, and it's not even that strong. Sure, it can fry an imp with a single shot, but so can the shotgun as long as I'm close enough. The only positive I can think of would be the gun's decent range. Actually, no, scratch that, because by the time I made it to the last level, I realized just how useless the thing really is. During the final mission, there are 3 teleporters in the room, which constantly spawn demons as you whittle down the horde. The number of demons is staggering, and your weapons just can't keep up. Trying to close them brings up a text prompt that tells me I don't have the power. This wasn't a thing before this moment, and since the Unmaker is just a glorified pea shooter, I just die and die. Fuck this gun, fuck this game, I hate it all.
It's not the game's fault you're bad.
Who the hell are you? I swear to God I locked my doors this time.
Not the windows!
Damn it! Anyway, what are you talking about?
Well, for starters, you can actually upgrade the Unmaker and collect the items needed to seal the teleporters for the final boss.
What in the... where?
In the secret levels. Duh.
What?
Yeah, just like every other Doom game that came before it, and even after it, there are secret levels to find at certain levels. In each of these secret levels, there is a demon key you can find, and of course going through myriads of monsters and challenges first. However though, these demon keys are still missable in the secret levels, as in each one you need to solve a puzzle to get access to it. So yes, even though you're in the level itself, it does not guarantee you a set key. Now luckily for you, you got a fox here to help you claim these keys and unmake those demons. Eh? I guess I wish I could unmake that joke. Now on map 04, holding area, this is where you can go to the first secret level, Outpost Omega. You can get to the secret exit by fighting the 4 switches on the gallery before the normal exit, and you have to press them in a certain order or else you'll mess it up and can't gain access anymore. Luckily for you, you can quick save in the Night Dive Remaster, but on the original version, yeah, password system, and so if you mess it up, back to the start level you go. However, the right order is 3, 1, 2, 4. Then go through the teleporter on the right door by the exit, run across the platforms, and bam! Secret level. In Outpost Omega, it plays like a challenging level. You'll eventually find a room that is yellow everywhere, and the demon key is visible, but you can't get to it just yet. Navigate the maze, shoot any switches to move the room around, and you can teleport back to the beginning luckily enough. Run back into the room with the Macubuses, press the right panel on the door frame, and a niche should open up across the room, revealing the right key that is needed to open the door to your first demon key. Now onto map 30, the lair. It's quite a confusing map to be in, with many monsters, turns, mazes, and a cyber demon for your consideration. The demon key thankfully is quite easy to get, as it's right there, in the sky, and you just jump. Wait. Go through the level as normal, and once you defeat the cyber demon, enter the smaller room in the left relative to the entrance with the wood floor, and you hear a timed wall lower. Shoot that before it goes away, look to your left, and see through a smaller square window. Shoot that switch that revealed itself, and ta-da! The central pillar lowers itself for the demon key, all for you. Welcome to map 31, In the Void. And quite literally, you're in a green void full of monsters. Most notably, paint elementals hanging out there shooting out those flaming skulls. No one likes them. Anyways, the demon key here is a lesson in backtracking. After you hit the yellow key switch, just walk past the arc on the way to the exit. You'll see the screen shake because apparently there's earthquakes and voids. Out of all the things in Doom games, and the one that has me questioning is earthquakes and voids. Back to the demon key, there should be a switch here. Press it and run all the way back to the blue key. It will be risen a bit that will allow you to run into the tunnel and get the demon key. Oh, oops, did it disappear? And did I forget to mention that this entire section is timed? No? Because it is. And this is probably the most infuriating part of the secrets. After you got all three, your Unmaker is considered fully upgraded and deletes any enemies in your path. Let your hatred flow through the weapon. Erase all demons. Oh. Oh, and also closes the 3 teleporters in the final level with the mother demon, making the fight itself literally a joke, allowing you to hit the gritty on her corpse.
Well, that was a lot. At least we're done now.
Oh, you don't know about Hectic? The super secret level in the bonus maps? Let me tell ya. Hectic is a super secret map that no one knew existed until it was published in a GamePro magazine, and you can only access it through the first level, via an extremely wonky and easily messed up barrel shooting process. But once you do that, welcome to Hectic, where you can all sorts of goodies if you beat the level, but you ignore the obvious traps of the armor and the soul spear. They'll instantly kill you. Trust me, it sucks. In each of these 3 rooms, there's a challenge in them. The right has you kill 2 Arachnotrons with a rocket launcher, but be careful, the roof crushes you if you're not in the right spot. The middle room is a dart room. Grab the yellow key and get out. It's actually quite easy. Now the hardest room is one to your left. You get a rocket launcher at the end of the walkway, but both sides open, revealing 4 Hell Knights. Once all that is done, you can exit and move on to level 2. You did it!
That was it? No hidden items like the others? Nothing?
Nope. Just a tough as balls level that was hidden really well.
Why? Why would you put me through all that?
We're not done.
Huh?
Open your menu, and you should see a new option called Features. That gives you all the cheats in the game. Full ammo, invulnerability, all items, anything your heart desires. And oh look, a level select. Take a look through there. Oh, there are levels in here that are not part of the actual game? These are called the fun levels, each one involving a cyber demon fight and your pistol starting a level. I won't go into too much depth with these levels as they are all involved fighting the cyber demon. These maps were created as fun Easter eggs to be found as they can only be seen in the features menu. There is no way to get to them through any normal means. Now that I got you through all that, you ready to get back in there, Justin, and conquer hell? Yep, he's ready.
Okay, after completing the soul-crushing process of gathering up the demon keys, the Unmaker becomes the best gun in the game. Its fast fire rate, multiple projectiles, and damage output almost immediately eclipses anything else in the sandbox. But I don't think that the effort needed to get the fully upgraded Unmaker is worth it at all! And that is solely because of the way the puzzle segments are designed. The puzzles in this game are just as, if not more cryptic and confusing as the main games. Luckily for me, this time around, the developers were a bit more merciful when it came to spreading these puzzles out. Either that, or I've gotten slightly better at sniffing out the solutions to these damn riddles. To highlight this, and or my own stupidity, we're going to take a look at the first of many puzzles, which were so mind-boggling to me that I had to look up the solution online. And yes, you will lose all respect for me because of this. Level 8, Final Outpost. Which, by the way, its text makes it look like it says anal. I don't know, Anal Outpost. Only 8 levels into the game, and I was already stumped by a classic, borderline nonsensical Doom puzzle. In order to progress, you need to collect the yellow keycard at the center of the room. However, the card is sitting on top of an extended pillar. Walking inside to get a better grasp on the situation, you notice 2 different switches on either side of the room. One lowers the pillar, but also drops down a metal fence which keeps you from grabbing it. No big deal, the next button must raise the cage, and my assumption was kinda right. The metal gate did rise, but so did the pillar. Okay, that must mean it's timed. Slightly annoying, but it's far from the worst puzzle I've ever encountered in a Doom game. Looking at you, Doom 2 crate bullshit. So, I repeated the process. Dropped the pillar, sprinted over to the next button as fast as I could, and nope! The same exact thing happened. At this point, I'm checked out. Unless they hid the switch on the other side of the map, the solution had to be in the room. So now, I'm just repeatedly mashing the 2 buttons, hoping that something will happen. But alas, nothing. So I do what we all do when we get stumped on the game. I looked up the solution on YouTube. I just want you to guess what the intended way to solve this puzzle is. Go ahead, I'll wait. As it turns out, the buttons inside the room itself were little more than red herrings. They literally serve 0 purpose. What you were supposed to do is walk into the hallway and turn until you see this panel texture, which is reused often, mind you, and click it, which, despite there not being any indication that it does anything at all, lowers the pillar, allowing you to pick it up. If there is anyone in the comments who tries to defend this, you definitely can, and I look forward to seeing what your argument may be, and perhaps I'll change my point of view. This issue, to varying degrees, permeates the entire experience. You'll never escape the game's intentionally ambiguous solutions. Sure, you may be able to figure these out on your own, but that's after an obnoxiously large amount of trial and error run-throughs. And as I stated in the first video in this retrospective, if a player feels completely lost, with no clear sense of direction or goal in mind, and the developers fail to properly communicate so much as vague hints towards the solution, where the actual means of progression is something so obscure and frustratingly specific that there is little to no chance of someone discovering them on their own. I wouldn't call that good design. Not every puzzle is quite as rage-inducing as level 8's yellow keycard, but I can still list off a few Switch puzzles that pissed me off to no end. Level 8, 17, 28, as you need to discover the hidden maps in order to stand a chance, and finally, the first hidden map itself, Omega Outpost. Although, much like its older brothers, Doom 64's fun, albeit unoriginal combat flow salvages the final product. Though I was a bit harsh on the gameplay structure at the beginning of this episode, I cannot deny, shooting things in the classic Doom games is still extremely satisfying. And combating the demons is intense and stressful in the best ways possible, where any death is obviously my own fault, and not because the game just expected me to click on this random goddamn tile in the hallway. With that, we've covered pretty much everything Doom 64 has to offer. There is an additional campaign in the 2020 remaster called The Lost Levels, which helps bridge the gap between this game and the 2016 reboot, but for the most part it doesn't offer up anything new, and is simply another set of maps for you to rampage through, with all the positives and negatives from the base game remaining. The tremendously horrifying art design and claustrophobic environments, twisted, distorted sounds playing in your ear whilst you walk through the halls, with your finger on the trigger at all times, competent though stale combat which never fails to stimulate, and all of this put onto a little gray cartridge for a system known for Super Mario 64. The fact that this game exists is stunning in and of itself. It was developed by a team with little to no direct involvement with any Doom project before this, with the original developers acting as little more than supervisors as they worked on their own in-house projects, hitting just about every development roadblock in the book thanks to the lacking power of the hardware and Midway's ambitions, unfortunately resulting in quite a few concepts left behind on the cutting room floor. There is actually concept art for 2 wholly original monsters, the Hellhound, which did eventually make an appearance in the often forgotten Doom mobile phone RPGs, which is more than I can say for the other one, but despite it all, Doom 64 is the most enjoyable, except these, experience I've had with classic Doom. Shocking, I know, because I came away with quite a positive impression of the prior entries. Take one look at the title for Doom 2's review, and it says all you need to know. Even so, Doom 64 was the most memorable time I had with any of these games. It played on my familiarity with the first 2 games in ways I would have never seen coming, and though it does have all the same flaws that the others also have, that doesn't make it bad. We should be able to take a look back at any video game and acknowledge that more often than not, they are full to the brim with issues at the core of its experience, whilst also appreciating it for the many positives and strides in game design it pushed forward. That was my thesis when taking a look back at Doom 1 all that time ago. And after finishing the classic Doom series, I can tell you firsthand that these are not perfect games, but despite it all, Their impact on the gaming industry was tremendous, and no matter what I may say against them, that will always be true. But these games, including Doom 64, are still classics that deserve to be played by anyone who's a fan of first-person shooters. Well, thanks for dropping by and telling me about the secret levels, you actual home invader. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before I call the police?
Oh, thanks for asking. Well, you can follow me at twitter.com/Robyn Renard, or follow me on Twitch, where I live stream almost every day at twitch.tv/Robyn Renard. I mostly stream fighting games and boomer shooters, like Doom 64, but, you know, hopefully you can come by and say hello. You're still calling the police, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll go through the front door this time.
I'm buying a gun.